Welcome to How They Do That. I'm your host, Scott Waldron, and here is a little preview of what you're going to hear today.
Like, here's 3 ways to build more empathy on a team, or here's 2 ways you can go to build more trust, or what have you, right? In fact, that's why I said if you're trying to get started in it, that it's totally fine to offer to speak for free still, because the trade isn't I'm speaking for free to get exposure. The trade is I'm speaking for free in order to capture video on this. And most people will say yes to that because they're still getting a great deal, you for free. And then you might get passed around and do 3 or 4 events in a year with them, but it's same client, different audience every time inside that organization. So that's much more likely. And you can
Today, we're going to talk to David Burkus, and David is an organizational psychiatrist turned speaker. And we're going to talk about what happened there with that transition. He exclusively does speaking now. He doesn't take on coaching clients, but he'll do kind of executive retreats and things like that. I really wanted to hone in on David's speaking career, and we talk a little bit about generating some of those speaking gigs and how he's using YouTube to actually do that. And I do want to tell you, my friends, that he has boosted his speaking revenue by 25 to 30% per year by starting to post regular content on YouTube. And that is relevant content. We'll talk about that later on in the interview, and you'll hear why it's making sense and why you should be doing the same thing, and why there's no reason why you can't do the same thing using the technology that we have today. David is one of the world's leading business thinkers. He's a skilled researcher, an inspirational communicator. David Burkus is a best-selling author of 5 books about business and leadership. He's won multiple awards and that have been translated in dozens of languages. In 2017, David has been ranked multiple times as one of the world's top business thought leaders. He's been on Harvard Business Review, New York Times, CNN, BBC, NPR, CBS Mornings. I think you've heard some of those. He's a former business school professor. He teaches one class right now, and he talks about that a little bit more. But he's worked with PepsiCo, Fidelity, Adobe, and NASA. And his keynotes are the jam. So check out his YouTube channel. He's got a lot of information on there, and you'll start to see what I'm talking about as far as the content he creates and why you can do the same thing too. Dave, thanks for being on the show, man. So good to have you.
Oh, no, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, excited to chat.
You are an organizational psychiatrist turned speaker. Tell us about that path. Like what happened where you're just like, this organizational psychologist thing is awesome. Like, I want to do that. I want to build my business on that. And you're like, wait, this speaking thing's like the jam. Like, what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, the line I use is that I'm a business school professor. I just traded the classroom for the boardroom, right? Or something even more catchy than that whenever I think of it. You know, to me, it goes back all the way to like high school. Like, I entered senior year of high school, started applying for colleges, et cetera, to be a writer. Now, when you're 17 years old, you think writing means fiction, right? So the grand existential crisis is not, do I write leadership and teamwork books? The grand existential crisis is like, am I trying to be Jack Kerouac, or am I trying to be James Patterson, right? Like literary or commercial. And it was in college studying English and creative writing that I took my first sort of elective course in organizational communication, organizational psychology, then started reading some of the popular books in this space. So this was like about when Malcolm Gladwell was writing New Yorker articles, not yet a full-on book and that sort of thing. And I just found it fascinating. These are people using storytelling tools, the same stuff I'm learning in fiction classes, but they're actually helping people. They're writing stuff that's useful based in social sciences, et cetera. And so I graduated and decided almost immediately to go on to grad school to study organizational psychology. Now, that leads to a path that almost always ends you up in academia, right? So I ended up teaching business school here in Tulsa for about 10 years. And then essentially COVID, like I wrote my first 3 books while I was still teaching full time. And so I was getting invitations to speak and work with clients and doing a little bit of it, maybe like 6 to 10 events a year, maybe 1 senior leadership offsite a year, that type of thing. But what happened was one of the books we wrote was sort of a future of work book and talked a lot about the increase in remote work and places not having a home office and all that sort of stuff. And so you can imagine COVID made that really popular. And so what ended up happening is all of our classes went online, and also all of my speaking work went online because people weren't meeting at the office. They weren't having events, et cetera. And so I was able to balance the two. But when everything started going back in person, I had to make a choice, right? And to me, the choice was, it's really fun to impact the younger generation, to sort of train them up, et cetera. But it's really easy to see your impact immediately when you're talking to, the top 150 senior leaders of an organization or something like that. So that was kind of the reason for the switch. Essentially, the university said, hey, classes are back on campus. And I said, yeah, that's great, but I'm not. I'm going to have to do this instead. And so since then, that's what I've been doing almost primarily. I still teach 1 class a year for our executive doctoral program. But other than that, all the teaching I do now is in conferences, in boardrooms, in hotel ballrooms where we gather those leaders, et cetera. And it's an absolute blast.
So how did you get started? How did your speaking career start?
Yeah. So for the longest time, my primary, let's call it marketing efforts, were just writing a book, right? You write a nonfiction book, you do a deal with a traditional publisher, then it's sort of there's about a 3 to 4 year cycle. You sign a contract, you start researching the book comes out, you market the book for about 2 years. Marketing the book inevitably leads to invitations to work with people, to speak, to coach, to consult, et cetera. It's a great, I hate that term, like a book is a great business card, because I put a lot more work into it than I would into designing a business card, right? So it's a lot more than that, but it really is a primary marketing effort. So my first book came out in 2013. And by spring 2014, we were starting to just get inbound inquiries to speak and what have you. Inbound is actually the only type of marketing I know. I ironically wrote a book about networks and networking, but I don't do it as a means of lead generation. I get enough inbound inquiries. I like making content that's really useful. Now it's less books and more a variety of different types of content, but that's what I like doing. So it started with that, and then gradually it just grows. It compounds. It's not unlike when you're coaching or consulting, right? That you have those first initial inquiries, they become success, and then you get referred to other places. And so now that I've been at it for 10 years, the last 4 with a full-time focus, a lot of that just turns into referrals, et cetera. But the fuel that keeps that cycle going has always been content. First books, and now we do a ton on social media, YouTube, et cetera, to try and generate more leads.
So what I'm hearing is that you're going to be back on to talk about how to publish a book, and you're going to be back on to tell us how to get more inbound, how to master that inbound marketing funnel. Yeah. Yeah. Whichever, or we can cover one now and one later, whatever you want to do.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Exactly. We're going to hit on the speaking thing now, because I think that's your jam. I mean, we get to all the other stuff. Yes, please. The speaking thing, the delivery thing. How many speaking gigs are you doing right now in a year, you think?
So the goal every year is between 35 and 40. Of that, let's say 25 to 30 for 2024, because obviously it's been shifting. About 25 or 30 of those will be in-person events, and the remainder will be kind of virtual, either because the whole team is virtual, or because, like, for example, next week I'm working with a group that's in Singapore, and like I can't be in Singapore and Idaho Falls in 2 days apart, so it has to be virtual, right? But that's kind of the breakdown, and that there's 2 reasons for that. Primarily, we almost always hit that goal because I have a hard cap around that. I have a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. I want to stay happily married. And so we kind of cap it at that. I also live in a very low cost of living area where that's enough, man. That's plenty. And I'm much happier not getting on a plane any more often than that.
Right on. When you're doing your speaking, you're out there, is it the thing that is driving you? I mean, driving your business, right? The speaking. What are you doing after that? I mean, do you have a call to action? Is there some kind of thing you want people to do after when you're speaking?
Yeah. So most of the time what happens is I get called in to speak because either the organization or the association has a specific problems around employee engagement, problems around culture, problems around maybe there's a new merger and we're trying to get people to feel like one team instead of multiple different teams. But my really expertise, well, when I was a researcher and professor and now is around teams, teamwork, and collaboration, right? So usually it's a problem. Some of the time it's because a professional association surveyed their members and they said it's like engagement, for example, is a huge problem this year that we're seeing from a lot of associations, or it's because the organization itself is having that problem. When we structure the talk, and this is maybe me relying on my more business professor chops as opposed to just trying to be sort of a pump 'em up inspirational speaker. When we structure every talk, we usually structure it around 2 to 3 main points. Each point has some research behind it. Each point has a case study because everybody remembers the stories. And then each point has 3 or 4 takeaways. Like here's 3 ways to build more empathy on a team, or here's 2 ways you can go to build more trust or what have you, right? And so it's those takeaways. I throw a lot in a 1 hour or a 75-minute speech or shorter. Sometimes I throw a lot at people, and my goal is just that they leave with 1, right? If I give you 6 takeaways, you're not going to apply all 6, but I have a better shot of making sure everybody in the audience leaves with 1. Right. So after that, there usually is no call to action to work with me. It's sort of like, especially if it's an association event, it's a keynote speech. It's a one and done type of thing. Most of the time when we work with an internal client, there is what I call aftercare, which is more like, hey, here's a series of videos, here's articles, here's a workbook, et cetera, that you can drip out to your team after to sort of reinforce the message. But it's not like, there are a lot of folks that use speaking to fuel, hey, reach out to me for coaching, reach out to me for consulting, et cetera. I don't do that. I like the nice cleanliness of the transaction of like, you need a keynote speaker slot on this subject. I'm your guy for that. And then if you want to work together in the form of doing another one or some other aftercare thing, we can talk about it, but most of the time, not.
Okay. There are a lot of, I'm included, right? I do a lot of speaking as well. But my call to action is generally to generate leads for the coaching business. So there's a lot of coaches out there that'll do that. Your space being in the speaking space exclusively, that seems to be, that is your jam, right? Is to generate more speaking gigs, to build those relationships and get those referrals for the speaking that you're wanting to do. So I think it's really important. What I'm trying to make the point here is that make sure you know what you want to do out there. Like, that and explore those things. And I'm doing the same thing as well, making sure that I know that, man, I love speaking, coaching. I love coaching too. What aspects of coaching do I want to keep doing versus not?
Yeah. And I think it's really important for clients that you are very, very well positioned. I have a lot of friends who were consultants, use speaking to fuel their consulting business, and then really struggled to break out and get to the point where they're getting, let's call it a livable keynote fee, right? Like sometimes if you're my friend Tom Webster calls it free noting, right? You're the keynote, but you're doing it basically for travel expenses because it's going to generate business, or you might get an honorarium. But like, if you want to make the jump from honorarium to what's your speaking fee, then you really need to position yourself in the market as a speaker who happens to maybe take on 1 or 2 consulting clients. But if they think you're still a consultant or a coach first, then automatically sort of the client is going to try and figure out, okay, what kind of deal can I get? Because I know I'm giving you that exposure. And so like I said, I like the cleanliness of, no, if I come, here's what we're going to do. Maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's 60-minute keynote speech. Sometimes it's a 3-hour workshop with a senior leadership team. But like after we do it, we're basically done with my time, other than maybe dripping out some additional resources. And what that allows me to do is just have a very frank conversation about the cost of that, because there is no ongoing potential afterwards.
Okay. If you don't mind sharing, what do you consider a range to be for like a livable keynote fee?
Yeah, I think you probably have to get into 5 figures to really make it work. I know some people who are able to have a fee of $5,000 or $7,500. Maybe they speak to high school or college audiences and they're doing 80 something events a year. But really, let's go over bands actually first. This might be helpful. So when you're starting out in speaking for a fee, your usual bands, given you have some expertise and presumably you're a decent speaker, you've graduated from speaking for free or honorarium, kind of that first tier is going to be $5,000 to $7,500, et cetera. right? The next tier is going to be 10 to 20 grand. And that's really just going to depend on your reputation, on your calendar, your availability, et cetera. And that's where I think you get into the livable. I know a lot of people who still 10, 15, maybe 20, and they can make that work. They're on the road a whole lot more than people that get into the next level, which is like 25 to 50. After 50, you're either like mega famous in the industry, like an Adam Grant or a Malcolm Gladwell, or you're like, you won a Super Bowl ring, or you were a former Secretary of State or something like that, right? Like after that, it gets astronomical, but that's when you're in like the celebrity territory. For the experts who speak, it kind of, the top out is usually between 25 and 50 for a fee. And so, yeah, I consider that livable, that second tier, right? If you're in the 5 to 7,500, you probably still take on a lot of coaching clients. Maybe you still have a job you're trying to work your way out of, et cetera. But when you can get into that kind of 5-figure thing and you can get 2 to 3 events in a month, okay, now you've got something you can really work with and make this your full-time thing.
Do you have recurring clients, recurring revenue from certain associations or clients that you can tap back into?
So, yes and no. It's usually not associations. Associations are very interesting, right? So professional, so name your profession. There's a professional association for it, right? They usually do an annual conference and maybe a second smaller conference for like leaders and managers in said industry. That annual conference will survey its members. It'll say, what are your big 3 questions or challenges? This year it's things like the economy. So we're going to get an economist, employee engagement. So we might get me, and AI. Everybody's like, oh, what's AI going to do, right? So then they're going to go, okay, who are great keynote speakers in those 3 areas? We have Monday morning, we have Monday afternoon, we have Tuesday morning, and then the conference dismisses, or we all go play golf or whatever, depending on the association. So they have 3 slots, so they're going to find 3 people, right? You usually will not get an invite back to something like that because every year those problems are going to change, right? If you have recurring revenue, like I have a pretty consistent client that's one of the big 4 accounting firms, that's usually because you've got a 20, 30,000 person organization. And you've managed to make it through their vendor registration process, which for a large company like that can be a really annoying thing involving background checks and all sorts of stuff. So then you're in this smaller pool. And what tends to happen is like a partner or a senior leader will say, hey, I need somebody for this for my team's meeting. And then you might get passed around and do 3 or 4 events in a year with them, but it's same client, different audience every time inside that organization. So that's much more likely. And you can kind of stumble your way into those. They're a lot of fun when they happen, but even those are sort of few and far between. It's much more often that they think, hey, here's a problem. We need somebody who can speak to it. Okay, here's who we're going to pick. And next year, there's probably going to be a different problem.
Yeah, associations, if you are the keynote, aren't probably going to bring you back for a keynote again.
Right.
For
maybe in 4 or 5 years when you have a new book and it's either a different take on the same problem or it solves a different problem. But no, they're probably going to bring somebody back a different person the following year.
Right. So you've gone into the speaking business. You put a lot of content out there on your socials. And you said that is the main way, like you're driving a lot of business that way. And it's your speaking business. So you have a lot of clips of you speaking, you have reels of you speaking, you have these short little bite-sized helpful tips about different things. You've been able to really scale your YouTube channel, which is awesome. So what have you done to do that? Whether it was upgrading technology, whether it was the way you dig up content, the way, I don't know, what are you doing?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was everything wrong.
What were those things you did wrong?
Yeah. No, so the first thing I did back in 2010, even as a professor, I started a podcast. Like, this is my hipster saying, I started one before it was cool, which was true because to start one in 2010 involved like handling the recording by splicing a bunch of different stuff together, then manually uploading it to a server on your website. Like there was no easy Spotify for podcasters, whatever thing, right? We had to do it all manually. But because there wasn't a lot of competition, right? And so I ran that podcast, interview-based podcast, for like 8 years. And it was a great way to build an audience, build a following. It was a great way to market my own books. And it was a great way to have fascinating discussions like this, right? So I still love interview-based podcasting. What happened was in 2018, sort of late 2018, we launched the book, and I was on so many shows I couldn't keep mine going. So we just paused it for a second. And then in 2019 or so, I looked around and I was like, you know what made podcasting work before was that it was unclaimed space, right? It was very hard to get into, so very few people got into it. What's the new version of that? And I basically, for me, it was YouTube. There were a lot of people who had a tremendous amount of success on YouTube, but not very many in the kind of leadership and teamwork category, right? I mean, really, if you look at it, you've got Simon Sinek, who's got 1 million something subscribers, but he's also won the internet lottery like 4 times by now. Can't replicate that. You got a couple people that are in the 50,000 to 100,000 range, but they're actually more career oriented than they are sort of pure leadership. And then you got a lot of people that are putting out content that it may be easy to sort of compete with. So that's what we decided to do. Now, the thing we did wrong is I thought it would be really fun to post a new piece of content every single day. So that's what we did. But that was before Shorts came out, right? YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels and whatever. And so YouTube hated us. The algorithm just crushed us because we were putting out short content that was too short to run an ad on. And we were putting out every day. So it didn't have time to serve it out to our audience because at 24 hours later, there'd be a new video. And we kind of screwed up on that a lot in 2019. 2020, we decided to make that flip to a longer form video, which was fun. And that grew it a lot more. And that's still what I would recommend for most people to do. And we could talk about that in a second. And then when Shorts finally came out and became popular in 2022, 2023, we took it seriously, but not we didn't switch to it. So all we did was sort of dial down the frequency. So right now we post one, I'm actually filming it later today. We post one like heavily produced, scripted out 14 to 18 minute long block of content, long form video a month. And then we pull excerpts from that, some excerpts from speeches and whatever, and do more on the short side. The short side is really about increasing engagement and subscribers. The long form one is actually a search play. YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world, and it's owned by the number 1 search engine, Google, or Alphabet, if you will. And so there are a lot of scenarios where people will say they have a problem and then go search that problem, whether it's on Google or YouTube or what have you, find a video of mine and go, wow, that was great. And then email me and go, hey, I watched this 14-minute video. We have a senior leadership retreat coming up in 3 months. Can you do an hour-long version of that 14-minute video? And yes, I can, right? So books are still the number 1 lead generator to me, but YouTube in particular, that search function and people finding problems and wanting video is already number 2 and is very quickly coming up against books for lead generation.
Are you spending a lot of time optimizing those channels and titles and descriptions? And are you doing a lot of the SEO stuff now, or is AI taking the place of that for you? Or like, how are you managing all that?
Yeah. So, no, but we pay attention to it. So one of the fun things is YouTube now for long form videos has the ability to A/B test thumbnails. So we do make 3 or 4 thumbnails. We let YouTube decide which one is actually making the most clickable. SEO, when you have experience in an industry, SEO is really not something you need to pay too much attention to. And here's what I mean, right? The impetus for every video we make is a problem, usually a problem I've heard multiple clients or prospective clients say, right? So same thing, if you think about this from a coaching perspective, like you may be serving 8, 10 different coaching clients at the same time. My guess is 80% of them have the same situation, the same problems. They come to you with sort of the same issues, right? So then all you really need to do from an SEO standpoint is go, okay, this is a really frequent problem. Is this a problem people turn to the internet for? So there are some tools you can do to research that. You type in certain keywords and see how many searches there are and that kind of stuff. But we don't get to the level of like some people test different titles in the same first 24 hours, that sort of stuff. We don't do that. We look to the SEO tools just to go, hey, okay, this is a problem I'm hearing often in the industry, and it seems to be a problem people also search the internet for. So let's make a piece answering that.
I guess one of my questions is like, how are you making sure, or how are you being intentional about it, or is it just happening that event planners and that, learning development teams and whoever's putting on corporate things are finding your stuff?
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing anything to specifically target or micro target event planners or organizational development people or whoever's planning or senior leaders because they're planning their own offsite. We're not doing anything for that other than, again, leaning into what those problems are. And those problems change, right? So like last month's video was about leadership and AI just because people are talking a lot about it, right? And have a lot of questions about it. And so we did the research and made the piece. And I look at each one of these as almost like micro books or maybe articles, long form articles you do for like an HBR. Like the reason we do a month is we put a lot of care into like, is this a problem a lot of people have? Okay, let's go get the research that's going to be really helpful for them. Let's script out something that's really useful. It takes 2 days to shoot it. Takes about a week and a half to edit it. And the rest of that time in a monthly cycle is literally researching and scripting. So it's almost 3 weeks of just research and scripting time. And so again, we don't micro target to those types of clients, but we know that like if you're putting out content that solves a problem lots of people are having, they'll find you. And so we just trust that they'll find it. Now, every once in a while, you're surprised. The video pops off that you weren't expecting it to do, or it leads to like, there was a video I didn't take all that seriously, maybe when we filmed it like 2 years ago about how to have feedback conversations with low performers. And we get a lot of interest based off that one video. And I wouldn't have told you that would be the one, but it happens, right? So
I can see that for sure. And I think all of us can say that there are some things we hear consistently when we're going around and constant problems that we're hearing. So you're saying tap into those, build content around those, and then generate that interest, be topical, top of mind.
No, that would be my number one piece of advice for any coach or consultant that's trying to figure out how can I do this is just make a list of the questions clients just keep asking you and then film one video per question. Doesn't have to be much, like get a decent camera, a decent microphone, right? And everything you've got works perfect for it, right? And then just film it. And literally the title of your video is that question. If you want to get fancy with keyword research tools, you can, but like just that question alone, if enough people ask it, they're going to ask it to Google, to DuckDuckGo, to YouTube, and they're going to find you, right? And then there's a lot you could do with chopping it up and making little shorts and that sort of stuff. But I honestly wouldn't even worry about that getting started. Just one video per question and get it out there. And then when people find you answered their question, the next time they have a question, they might just email you directly and say, hey, how about working together?
Right. So what's the one thing of action people could do right now in order to build their speaking business, generate the content that will build their speaking business, to get awareness of who they are?
Yeah. So specific to a speaking business, I would say answer those questions for sure. Specific to a speaking business, I would say try and get that filmed on stage somewhere, even if you have to sort of speak for free and bring your own camera in, because that's really the only difference. The problems are the same. If you're direct to camera sitting at your desk, et cetera, that leans itself more towards, hey, I'm marketing myself as a consultant, coach, et cetera. If they see you on stage and like, oh my gosh, they talk to people about this all the time, then when they have that problem specific to planning a meeting, they're kind of going to find you, right? But the answer is sort of the same in both cases. It's about finding that video of you being brilliant, right? If people like, I think now we're at the point where just writing out a bunch of articles, whether it's on your blog or Forbes or Inc. or something else like that, I think we're past that, because if people are deciding they want to work with you, then they want to see all of you, not just read your work. And so the only way to do that, short of meeting them one-on-one, is through video. So use it, and use it more often than you think you need to.
And not all conferences are going to film video.
Oh, no. Oh, and even if they are, they're going to be terrible.
I know. Right.
In my, other than like TEDx events, in my career, I have only ever gotten twice out of, I don't know, more, probably close to 300, maybe more than 300 paid speaking gigs in my time. I've only ever gotten high quality video from a client that was filming at the event twice, but I get a lot of video usually because I bring my own crew, right? I either locally, or I have the person that does, that runs the producer for the YouTube that does all that editing, et cetera. Sometimes I'll just fly him to where we are so that we can do that, right? Don't rely on them doing it. And in fact, that's why I said, if you're trying to get started in it, that it's totally fine to offer to speak for free still, because the trade isn't I'm speaking for free to get exposure. The trade is I'm speaking for free in order to capture video on this. And most people will say yes to that because they're still getting a great deal, you for free.
And always ask them if they are filming it and if you have permission to use that afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. But like, it's still not usually gonna be. I was just rewatching a video yesterday actually of what they sent me, which was their 2-camera shoot. And literally I was like, I can't use any of this. This is not gonna work. Yeah. Right. So the video is so important. Everybody's asking for video. Everybody. And it's not even like the short clips, like sizzle reel video stuff. They're like, hey, do you have like a 10-minute segment of you speaking on this? Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Sizzle reels are great. So the role of a sizzle reel changed over the last, because of technology, right? It used to be like, there was a time, now I was not speaking professionally when this time existed, thankfully. There was a time where you like mailed VHS or DVD tapes to prospective clients. And it was like, usually the whole DVD was like your sizzle reel for the first 3 minutes. And then if they wanted to watch more, it was a video of a whole speech, right? Now the sizzle reel, in my opinion, it exists on your website, or if you're represented by an agency, on their website. And the goal of the sizzle reel is just to get them to reach out, to fill out the contact form, to email you, etc. But when they're actually making a decision, like, hey, we've narrowed it down to 4 or 5 people, they're not going to rewatch the sizzle reel. They want to go, here's our problem. Do you have a video that speaks to that? Right. And it never ceases to amaze me, mind you, that a video, people will find me for a video that's already out there and then will say, I want you to say that same thing in person to my people. Like, you would think they want highly customized this, that. No, if you've already got the video of what solves their problem, then all they want is like, I want you to bring that content to my audience in the room. You could play my YouTube video for free if you wanted to.
I know.
They don't, right? Like, they don't. They just say, hey, I want you in the room with my people. How much does that cost?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, sure. Free versus, okay. I'll take it. Okay. What's the word of hope you would give out to all those people out there? They're wanting to build, they're wanting to scale, they're wanting to start, they're wanting to do something, and they're feeling like discouraged. They're feeling like, I've been trying this thing. I don't know how you do it, David. Like,
yeah, I can't give you a word. That'd be great, right? If I could just say a magical word to you. I can tell you that I've been in that exact scenario. In fact, I remember this conversation vividly. The fun part about having a podcast is you get to reach out to really cool people and have a conversation with them. And in 2014, I want to say, I was doing an interview with Daniel Pink, and we finished recording, and I asked him a question afterwards. And it was about, how do I speed up this? How do I do that? Whatever. And the first thing he said was just, well, you got to remember that you've been doing this for 3 or 4 years, and I've been doing it for 20. And I don't even remember what he said after that, but just in my mind, it was like, okay, wait, like, things compound. It takes time to see the results of compound interest. And so don't lose hope. Now, that said, that doesn't mean, like, certainly I don't want anyone to keep going. If you can't eat and you're wanting this, go get a job, right? But trust that compounding, it happens. For me, I started, first time I ever got paid to speak, right? It was 2014. It compounded for 6 years to the point where 2020 and accelerated because of COVID, but still 6 years before it was like, hey, I can make the leap. Right. But the thing that I didn't do, at least after that conversation with Dan, was I didn't lose faith in the power of time and compounding. So give yourself that time.
Good. Brilliant, man. Brilliant. Is there a podcast or a book, besides yours, obviously, that we should go check out that you're hot on right now?
Oh, man. I mean, how do I narrow this all down? I think so. From a podcast standpoint related to speaking, one of my favorite ones is just called Mic Drop. It's run by a buddy of mine named Josh Linkner, and it's a very good sort of deep dive into the industry. So I would check that out. Full disclosure, I've been on Mic Drop, and Josh is a friend of mine, et cetera. But that'd probably be if you're looking for like a really solid resource on that. I don't really know of a solid. Well, actually, I do. There's a great book by Drew Davis and Michael Port called The Referable Speaker that is all about how it's not really a outbound marketing, how to get sales now type of thing, but it's a great read on how to get that compounding to work for you, to get those referrals, et cetera, working for you.
Brilliant, man. Dave, you have given and given and given. I'm grateful for you. If nobody else listened to this, at least I got something out of it. So I really, I appreciate you, man.
That's great.
Thank you so much, seriously, for giving your time, your energy, and your ideas to us. All the things, man. Good luck. in speaking gigs. Good luck spreading the word and doing what you're doing some great stuff. Everybody go check out his YouTube channel. He's got so much good stuff that you can, I would say, imitate before you innovate, right?
Yeah.
So it's the idea, right? So thanks, Dave, for being the example, man.
Love it. No, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining me today on How They Do That. If you found this helpful, please rate the show wherever you listen to podcasts. You see, I help you, you help me. That's how it works. Oh, and please do not keep this to yourself. Share the show with a fellow coach who could also use these insights. Keep exploring, my friends. Never stop asking how'd they do that? Because with every question, you get closer and closer to refining your business and scaling your impact.